Hey, welcome back to our third week of Atypical. Glad you found us here on YouTube. We'll keep being here throughout the fall. Wanted to start off this last week in our series with a statistic. The Barna Group did a survey of Americans and what their primary factor was that helped make up their identity, like where they felt like they got a majority of their identity. They did it through a series of questions that helped determine whether it was through their faith and religion or whether it was through entertainment, their job, preferences, hobbies in life, a variety of things. And this is what they found, that nearly 2/3 of Americans, of all the people they surveyed, family made up majority of their personal identity. 62% of the people said, hey, I get the majority of my identity from family. How we show people in our family or church family that they matter may be the number one mission we have as Christians in this world today. That statistic is telling us how important family is. As we continue on our talk today on atypical families, what's another trait an imperfect family has when they follow God? I'll tell you, they forgive. Whether you caught on to this yet or not, over the last 2 weeks, forgiveness has been the undercurrent that has flowed through each story. Just like an undercurrent, forgiveness is powerful. Think about it. Our debt to God for walking away from Him, just like Adam and Eve did, has been forgiven. No longer held against us because of Jesus' great act of love dying on the cross in our place. Adam and Eve ate fruit so they could be like God and not need Him anymore, right? But it didn't turn out the way they thought it would. P.S. It never does. In case you missed it, this is when sin also entered the world. After all of that, God forgave them. He even went further than that. And His forgiveness showed up by helping them get clothes, right? Also helping them not be confused about their future, but reminding them of their purpose. Then you have Jacob stealing his brother Esau's birthright. So his inheritance after his dad was supposed to pass, which was a huge deal in those days. But let's be honest, think about it for 2 seconds. You'd be super ticked if that happened to you now. But even in their atypical, not perfect family, Esau ended up forgiving Jacob, which was powerful enough to dissolve bitterness and fear, along with mending years of broken relationship. That brings us to our last family. Joseph's brothers and Joseph. Joseph's brothers had kidnapped him, threw him in a pit they dug, and sold him into slavery to strangers that were passing by. Then they lied to Jacob, their father, and said Joseph had died. And quite a few years later, there was a famine in the region, and the only place that had food was Egypt. When guess who they run into while they're looking for food in Egypt? In Genesis chapter 45, verses 1 through 5, it tells us about this very moment. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all of his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence now!" So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loud that Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. P.S. He was a really powerful man, second in command in Egypt. They realize he's alive. Can you imagine the fear that came upon him, what they thought he was going to do to them? Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I'm your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Forgiveness is powerful. It has the power to redirect lost people, mend broken relationships, and in this story, save lives. See, Joseph could have pretended not to notice his brothers or punish them, kind of like the way they pretended he didn't exist all those years ago. And his brothers and their families probably would have eventually died from starvation. But Joseph knew the kindness God had shown him throughout his life. And it was way better to share that than keep it to himself. And the only way to do that was to have a heart full of forgiveness. And then there's one more thing I want to point out here. Forgiveness isn't just words. Forgiveness is action. You can tell someone has truly forgiven you through their actions afterwards. Think about that for a second. It's true. You know it. How do you know that someone has actually forgiven you? They show it. Forgiveness often looks like being generous in some way to the person that hurt you. We've seen this in our last couple stories. God gave purpose to Adam and Eve, direction for their life after sin confused them. Esau offered a place to live for his traveling brother Jacob. And Joseph offered food and water to his starving family. Forgiveness is vital, guys. And it's visible because it's powerful. And God says atypical families forgive each other. If we are going to be a forgiving people, then we need to learn from Joseph, okay? Like, plain and simple. Joseph recognized that God was at work in his life the whole time and had a plan to use all that hurt his brothers had caused for good. To forgive, you and I need to see that pain has a purpose. I'm going to say that again. To forgive, you and I, you and me, have to see that God is at work and making pain have a purpose. So be the person who forgives in your family and watch what God will do. Okay? We'll see you next time.